Hello everyone, I am Mr. Dread who has been telling you stories all the time. How is your day? Are you looking forward to new stories? Well, without further ado, let's get started with today's content. This time the story is about a wealthy Indonesian businessman. The protagonist is a sister from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Let's call her Lina. Lina graduated with a degree in hotel and tourism management and rose through the ranks as soon as she entered the workplace. She worked in a management position in a high-end hotel for 4 years before successfully transitioning into the private service sector as a personal assistant, a position she held for 6 years. The person she serves is a Chinese businessman who is one of the 5 richest people in Indonesia. At this point, everyone may be curious. Who is this rich man? To be honest, I am curious too. Although Lina never disclosed the other party's identity, I couldn't help but check the 2024 Forbes Indonesian Rich List, and the top few were indeed Chinese businessmen. As for who they are, I won't ask more. After all, we can't get a penny from him, right? Lina said that her husband's business is extremely large, with industries spread across Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. In September 2018, she officially joined the company and became his personal assistant. However, her job was not to look after all of the gentleman's properties or residences, but was specifically responsible for the gentleman's residence in Kuala Lumpur. It was a 3-story penthouse called a penthouse in English. Many people may not be familiar with this term, but it is usually the most expensive, private, and sophisticated apartment in the entire high-rise building. The 3 floors are connected, overlooking the city, with huge space, exquisite decoration, and extremely high security and privacy. But Lina's work is not done alone. The daily maintenance of a 3-story mansion is no joke. Although she is the supervisor, she naturally has a team to assist her. In this house, besides her, there is also a private chef, several maids from the Philippines, a gardener, and a dedicated driver. Doesn't sound like a lot of people? Don't forget, this is just one of the properties that the gentleman owns. Every house has this standard configuration. But today we are not going to talk about these seemingly glamorous high-end lives. What we are going to talk about are the weird things that happened since Lina first entered the house. Lina said that when she went for her first interview, she felt inexplicably depressed as soon as she walked into the room. The overall decoration of the house is in European classical style. The walls are covered with various portrait oil paintings, and there are many antique furniture with mottled copper ornaments and carved details. There is a damp and closed, dull atmosphere everywhere. Lina has always been one of those people with a strong sixth sense. She said, "That room is not right." But she couldn't tell what was wrong. She just stood in that house, as if she was covered by an invisible fog. Her heart was suffocating, and her steps were a little unsteady. But she was a rational person after all, so she didn't show it, thinking it was just an unfamiliar environment. After all, the salary was really high. Who wouldn't want to have trouble with money? Unexpectedly, before officially joining the company, the gentleman made a very special request. All employees must submit their date of birth. Lina didn't think much about it at first and handed it in according to the rules. But she later recalled that, "Don't ever give your horoscope to someone else. You never know what they want to do with it." She said this very seriously. "I will convey it to you on her behalf." Soon after joining the company, the gentleman assigned a task: to make an inventory of all the paintings in the house, and Lina had to take photos herself for archiving. This task was not difficult, just taking pictures and marking numbers one by one. Lina started to work quickly. Everything went smoothly until she walked into a study on the second floor and saw a portrait on the wall, which made her suddenly stunned. It was a painting of an Indonesian wizard. The person in the painting is covered in blood, with a hideous look in his eyes, and is performing some kind of ancient and twisted sacrificial ritual. The painting is dark in color and has strong brushstrokes, as if a damp and cold breath is coming out of the canvas. Lina swallowed and shook the camera in her hand. After all, she was a professional, so she took the photo without hesitation. But that night, she dreamed of something terrible. She dreamed that she was back in the mansion. The house was empty, as if all the sounds had been sucked out. The air was damp and cold. She stood in front of the painting, and suddenly heard the sound of high heels stepping on the floor from upstairs, getting closer and closer. She turned around suddenly, and a woman in white clothes and messy hair rushed over. Lina was frightened and woke up from her dream with cold sweat on her forehead. She quickly calmed herself down. It was just a dream. Maybe she was too tired that day, or the painting was too shocking and left a psychological impression. But she didn't know that this was just the beginning. The next day, she went to work as usual, driving the driver and gardener out to do errands. Not long after the car was on the road, a car suddenly rushed out from the side and almost hit them. Lina quickly turned the steering wheel, and the tires slid on the road with a sharp sound. Fortunately, it was only a thrilling moment, and the car was safe. But less than 2 hours later, the exact same emergency situation occurred again. Another car rushed out from the intersection at an unreasonable angle and almost collided head-on again. Lina's fingers were almost tightly gripping the steering wheel at the time, and she and the driver looked at each other with pale faces. There was silence in the car. She was not injured, but the feeling of being targeted by something began to linger. Lina wanted to keep this to herself. After all, she was not injured, so she just thought it was bad luck twice. But due to the delay, she still had to briefly explain it to the gentleman. She originally thought that the gentleman would be surprised or unhappy, but he just said, "Oh," after listening to her, and said lightly, "It's okay. Don't take it personally. It's not your problem." As soon as he finished speaking, he added, "It's probably the problem with my painting." Lina didn't react for a moment and stood there in a daze. Seeing her confusion, the gentleman was generous and continued to explain with a smile. "Many of the paintings in my home and office actually have stuff buried inside them. Some of the paintings originally had problems and would make trouble in the past, so they were sold cheaply in the market. I took them all back." Lina was stunned by these words and felt as if something hit her head and there was a buzzing sound. Her first reaction was, "Is this gentleman not quite right in his mind?" But as an assistant, she said nothing, only secretly feeling that something was wrong. Knowing that there are problems with the painting, he still collected it. Isn't this just asking for trouble? But then again, she was just an employee after all, and there were many things she shouldn't ask and couldn't ask. If the gentleman didn't want to talk, it wasn't her turn to ask. After that, the gentleman specifically reminded all employees, "Don't touch or look at paintings at home. If you encounter something strange, don't panic. Remember, Taking a bath in ice water is the most effective way to remove evil spirits. In addition, he also said mysteriously, "Remember the 9 words and don't say them carelessly." Lina asked what that meant, but the gentleman smiled and didn't answer. She guessed it might be some kind of taboo language or a curse in the dialect. Although these behaviors sounded strange and illogical, Lina was a rational and pragmatic person after all. She felt a little uneasy, but she didn't show it. The salary was high and the work was not hard, and as long as she didn't mess with those paintings, she planned to continue doing it. But as time went by, the strangeness in the house became more and more frequent. At first, those strange auras could be suppressed by reason, but some things really happened to the body. A few months later, the gentleman returned to Kuala Lumpur. One day, he suddenly had the urge to move an antique TV cabinet from the first floor to the 3rd floor. It was an old piece of furniture made of top-quality solid wood, with intricate carvings, extremely heavy, and more than 2 meters high. Normally, it would take at least 4 strong men to lift it. But at that time, there were only the gentleman, the driver, and Lina in the room. As an assistant, Lina couldn't just sit there and watch. Although she was a woman and had limited strength, she still offered to help. The 3 tried several times, but the furniture didn't move at all. Lina then said, "I'll go get the gardeners to come and help." Before she finished speaking, she just turned around and prepared to walk out. And just as she passed by the TV cabinet sideways, boom! The huge cupboard shook violently, and then it tilted and fell down. The whole scene happened so fast that no one had time to react. The cabinet seemed to be pushed by some force and fell towards Lina. In the next few seconds, time seemed to slow down. Lina's ears were filled with the sound of her own heartbeat, and before she could even scream, she was smashed under the furniture. There was a scream in the room. Fortunately, the cabinet was hollow and had no partitions, and Lina was just trapped in the middle space, so she did not suffer fatal injuries. But her thigh was bruised, she was sweating all over, and she was completely unable to move. The gentleman and the driver were in a panic, but they couldn't lift the heavy furniture together. Finally, the gardener and the chef came and worked together to move the cabinet and rescue her. But what impressed Lina most in this incident was not the injury itself. Instead, when she was lying under the cabinet, she clearly heard the man cursing loudly into the air. He spoke Javanese, and Lina couldn't understand a word he said, but she could sense that his voice was filled with anger and anxiety, as if he was scolding someone. She later recalled that it felt very strange, as if the gentleman was not scolding the object cabinet, but scolding an invisible being hiding in the furniture. From that moment on, Lina knew there was something really unclean in this house. After the cabinet pressing incident, Lina's view of the house changed completely. Although on the surface she was still working, directing, and managing as usual, she was quietly building up a defense line in her heart. She no longer stayed in the corridor alone, and tried not to enter the study with the portrait of the wizard after dusk. But the more careful she was, the more she realized that this house seemed to have already trapped her and all its employees under its rules. Lina said that in the following years, she and all the employees in the house experienced inexplicable things one after another. Sometimes, late at night, a tall man in a tang suit would appear at the corner of the stairs. He would sit on the steps, motionless, with empty eyes and his face unclear. Sometimes, The maid in the kitchen was washing dishes and suddenly heard someone calling her name from behind. She turned around, but no one was there. Then she turned around and saw another colleague coming down from upstairs, saying that she had not called anyone at all. More often than not, the room was eerily quiet at night, and suddenly, there was a sound of nails scratching the wall from the second floor. Click, click, click. One sound after another, coming from far away and getting closer, scraping and climbing up as it goes. The sound always stopped at the stairs on the third floor and then disappeared. The strangest incident happened in the audiovisual room. That was a private audiovisual space specially built by the gentleman, equipped with top-grade Bose surround sound system. It was rarely used and the power supply was always turned off. But late one night during a thunderstorm, Lina was checking the equipment in the house. When she walked down from the third floor to the second floor, she suddenly heard vague music coming from the hall. It was an old Chinese song from the 1970s, with a sad melody and the sound hissing with electricity. She was stunned. The power of the audiovisual room was not turned on at all. The power control key was still in her possession. She plucked up the courage to walk into the audiovisual room. The speakers were not plugged in, but music was playing. There wasn't even any light on the surface of the speaker. It just kept singing out of thin air, and the old lyrics echoed in the air, making her feel a chill down her spine. There were also a few times when there were thunderstorms, and a long-haired woman would be standing at the corner of the stairs. She did nothing but stand there, motionless, with her back to the stairs, not speaking, not moving. The rain dripped down the eaves and shone on her feet, like a silent reminder. She was always there. Lina also said that sometimes she had to work too late and had to stay overnight in the mansion. But whenever she stayed overnight, someone would always knock on her door at night. It wasn't just one or two hits, but a continuous tapping with an even rhythm and no pauses. She lay down under the crack of the door and looked out. The corridor was dark, but there were shadows swaying more than one. The shadows moved back and forth, as if something was patrolling back and forth. But when she opened the door, she saw no one. It felt like the person standing outside the door was not just a person, but a group of people waiting for her response. Someone asked her, after experiencing so many horrible things, had she ever thought about resigning? Lina smiled faintly and said, "How could there be none?" She had indeed thought of this more than once, but people can adapt after all. If you experience fear too much, you will become numb to it. What's more, the salary is just too high. She said directly, "It's not that I'm not afraid. I just learned to close my eyes. As long as they don't go too far and don't really hurt anyone. Just be patient and it will pass." Over time, everyone knew that there was something in the house. Even employees exchange experiences, such as, "That man in Tang suit is sitting on the stairs again today, you better be careful. Ignore the voice calling your name. It's not a human." Once, the chef whispered to Lina, "You think this apartment in Kuala Lumpur is scary enough? In fact, the villas on the mountain are even more outrageous. Those places, even drivers dare not drive up there at night." Lina just nodded at the time. She knew that this was just the gentlest of the gentleman's many properties. That gentleman is a very special person. Although he claims to be a Christian, he is always accompanied by a feng shui master. He was also particularly superstitious about various magic spells, offerings, and spirit exchanges. Whenever employees reported to him about supernatural phenomena, he never got angry, but instead smiled and said, "Oh, they came out to play with you again?" He spoke lightly, as if they were not spirits but naughty children. What impressed Lina even more was that during every festival, the gentleman would specifically ask her to prepare New Year's goods and offer incense and candles even if he was not at home. "They are going to celebrate the festival. If you don't put these up, they will be unhappy." He wasn't joking when he said this, he was serious. Lina did as she was told. Since then, she has gradually come to understand that this house was not designed for people at all. It's not just inhabited by humans. The time has come to 2022. The rhythm of life after the epidemic has restarted, and the whole city has gradually returned to its hustle and bustle. And Lina is still performing her duties in the mansion. But she soon discovered that the gentleman had changed. The wealthy businessman who used to smile and speak in a relaxed tone suddenly became moody. He would often lose his temper without any warning and even scold his employees for trivial matters. Lina initially thought he was suffering from business pressure or was not feeling well, but gradually she found that things were not that simple. Several times, when she went to work in the morning, she saw the gentleman sitting in the living room with a dull expression and wandering eyes. Those eyes that were once shrewd and sharp now seemed to be covered with a layer of light mist, sometimes dull, sometimes sharp, as if they were a different person. She even saw once, the gentleman had just woken up and was sitting at the dining table. There were several obvious bruises and scratches on his face. She asked him worriedly if he had fallen accidentally, but the gentleman whispered, "Someone must have cast a black spell on me." Another time, he said to himself, "I may have been bitten back." Lina felt cold at heart after hearing these words, but she didn't dare to ask any more questions. What really made Lina think about resigning was what happened in July 2024. That month, the gentleman held a birthday party for his mother. The whole process was lively and grand. The room was packed with guests, and on the surface it looked like everyone was having a great time. But the very next day after the banquet, the gentleman found Lina privately and said something shocking in a calm tone. He said, "Please help me contact that feng shui master. I have something to ask him." When Lina heard this, she agreed without thinking too much. The gentleman then lowered his voice and said, "I want to ask him to take a look at my mother's feng shui situation, how to solve it." Lina didn't understand for a moment. "What do you mean?" The gentleman said casually, "Her luck has been too good lately, and it's weighing me down. I want a feng shui master to see how to break the situation and pass it on to me." At that moment, Lina felt a chill on her back. This is his biological mother. But the gentleman's tone was as if he was discussing a business deal, without any emotional fluctuations. Although Lina found it hard to believe, she had no choice but to do as she was told. She contacted the feng shui master and relayed his ideas. After listening to me, the other party was silent for a long time and finally refused. "I can't take this." But the gentleman did not give up and asked several more times in private. As for whether the feng shui master agreed in the end, Lina said she was not sure. But from then on, her trust in this gentleman completely collapsed. The following month, in August 2024, Lina followed the gentleman to Indonesia to handle business. After returning from her journey, she suddenly began to feel something was wrong with her body. I felt listless and depressed, as if my whole body was hollowed out and I couldn't muster any strength all day. She went to the hospital for a checkup, but no cause was found. A good friend of hers saw that she was not in good condition and suggested that she go meet a senior sister who was quite prestigious in the circle. This sister believes in Thai and Chinese gods and is good at dealing with spiritual issues such as passive luck and black magic. Lina passed away that day. She remembered it very clearly, just after entering the room, before she had time to speak. The senior sister only glanced at her and said in a deep voice, "You need to resign immediately." Lina was stunned, thinking she had heard wrongly. The sister continued, "Do you feel like these past 2 years have been particularly rough? You haven't been able to get anything done, you're feeling down, and you're often in a daze for no apparent reason." Lina was stunned for a moment and thought, "Yes, that's exactly what you said." The sister asked again, "Think about it. Almost 2 years ago, did anyone offer to help you change your name?" Lina's pupils suddenly shrank. She remembered it clearly. Just 2 years ago, that gentleman, the feng shui master, had approached her and told her that her name was unlucky and that he could adjust it for her for free, which would help improve her fortune. She didn't take it seriously at the time and just thought it was a good intention. But now when she heard her senior sister mention it, she got goosebumps all over her body. The senior sister said coldly, "The other party used the excuse of changing your name to drain away your luck. It's not just you. The same is true for all the personal staff around him." She stared at Lina, her tone low but firm. "You were originally going to have good luck in the past 2 years. According to your horoscope, you should have had at least 80 points of luck. But now it's less than half." Having said this, the senior sister paused for a moment, then whispered to herself, "This person is really cruel." After hearing this, Lina's palms were covered with cold sweat and her voice was trembling. She asked, "So what should I do now?" The senior sister looked at her and said seriously, "You must resign within 3 days, but you must remember, you must not tell anyone that you know about this. Just say you are too tired, want to take a break, or consider changing careers. To say more is a risk. If you can leave smoothly, you have 2 options dash. Asterisk asterisk first, choose to fight head-on, fight with your magic, and take back some of your luck that was transferred away. Asterisk asterisk, but the effect is limited, and you won't get back much. Asterisk asterisk second, completely cut off the connection with his fortune, and then use the Buddha amulet for protection. Asterisk asterisk, this will not reverse your fate, but at least it will not be taken away again." The senior sister finally said, "You choose. Time is running out anyway." After careful consideration, Lina finally chose the second option. She resolutely resigned within 72 hours, citing poor health. From that moment on, she finally escaped from the mansion that looked gorgeous but was actually full of dark power. After resigning, Lina felt like she had escaped from an invisible abyss. She thought she was just leaving a job, but she didn't expect that she was escaping from some long-term mental confinement. Her breathing became easier, and her whole person gradually recovered. According to her senior sister's advice, Lina needs to go on a long journey for a while, both to relax her body and mind, and also as a ritual behavior to cut off her luck and change her fortune. She finally chose a remote, clean, and spiritual place, Tibet. Before leaving, she hung the newly purchased Buddha amulet around her neck with a thick silver chain, wearing it day and night, never taking it off. This amulet is not only a protective object, but also more like a barrier created for her by her senior sister, a line of defense to separate her from the shadow of the past. But something strange happened again. In just 2 months, from September to November, this piece of Buddha amulet actually fell 3 times for no reason. And the situation of the fall is extremely strange. It was clearly hanging around her neck, and the silver chain was thick and strong. But every time she looked down, she would find that the amulet was gone. But every time she found it nearby, on the floor, bed, or corner of the table she had just passed, Lina picked it up and saw that the chain was not broken and the amulet had no cracks, as if it had been taken off from her body out of thin air. She started to feel uneasy and contacted the senior sister immediately. After listening to this, the senior sister only said one sentence: "He noticed you left." Lina felt as if a cold hand had patted her on the back, and her breath was choked. "So, these 3 times?" The senior sister nodded gently. "The gentleman you are talking to was very unhappy. He tried to get them to come to you, but your amulet blocked it for you 3 times. Every time you fall, you are bearing the force of approaching for you." After listening to this, Lina was speechless for a long time. It turns out that this resignation was not the end, but the real battle had just begun. The story is coming to an end here. According to my sister, every property of that gentleman has good brothers. They exist not to protect their families, but to keep the wealth and make money. This is the object of his long-term worship, control, and leverage. A senior sister once said something that Lina always remembers: "People can seek wealth, but they cannot exchange their lives for it." Behind all that splendor, what is hidden is not prosperity, but layers of dark shadows and the fear of intertwined spiritual power. Lina still feels scared when she recalls those years. She said that since then, she no longer trusted any rich people. She once loved this job, liked the precision and elegance of a personal assistant, and appreciated the sense of accomplishment of serving top clients. But that house and that experience made her understand: some wealth is not worth approaching. Some people are not ordinary people at all. After she left her job, her senior sister began to teach her to study Buddhist scriptures and chant Buddha's name little by little. Lina's mood gradually stabilized. Although the scars were still there, she finally got rid of the invisible oppression. However, she never returned to the personal assistant industry. She said, "For some jobs, it's not that I don't want to do it anymore, it's that I can't do it anymore." Well, that's the story for this issue. I am Mr. Dread, the friend who always accompanies you with stories. If you like today's story, please like and subscribe. Or, if you have experienced something similar, please let me know in the comments. See you in the next story.